welcome to the 8 Limbs of Yoga video course. In this, our first lesson, I will be sharing with you an introduction to what are the 8 limbs of yoga. For all too many of us, if we are familiar with yoga, we are probably most familiar with the physical yoga postures. However, this is just 1/8 of what yoga is all about. And so as part of this lesson, I will be giving you an introduction to what are the 8 limbs of yoga. I will start by sharing a little about my personal journey with yoga and then taking you through some of the history and origins of the 8 limbs. Finally, we will conclude with what is the significance of the 8 limbs of yoga, especially when it comes to the benefits for your personal life. When it comes to my personal journey with yoga, on an informal level, it started many years ago. But roughly around the year 2005, I began to experience a personal inner shift of consciousness and also on a deep spiritual level that opened me up to a new way of living, thinking, and being. From then on, as each year passed, I found myself growing in awareness, expanding in consciousness, and naturally drawn towards attitudes and practices that were life-giving, and naturally pulling away from any attitudes or practices that were life-negating. Now, on a formal level, my yoga journey officially began in 2010. And a few years after that, I also became certified as a yoga and meditation teacher. And although I've been a teacher for about 15 years when it came to topics dealing with science and health and body and nutrition matters, as the years went on, I found the spiritual teaching component naturally activated within me. And so today it is my pleasure to help individuals like yourself on all levels of the mind, body, and spirit to expand your consciousness about all aspects of your being and about life and the greater nature of our reality. And to most importantly, lead a high quality life, a heart-centered life that is rooted in a deep sense of joy, inner peace, and fulfillment. So over the years, as I got to know yoga on both the formal and informal level, as well as experience the different yoga styles and practices and spiritual philosophies, it became very clear, as I shared with you in the introduction, that all too many of us here in the West simply understand yoga as a practice of physical postures, where people are more often concerned if they have the right clothes or if they're doing the right postures, rather than focused on what's happening in the mind and how we are living yoga in our daily life. This is one of the main reasons why I created this course, to help anyone like yourself who's interested in understanding yoga on that broader and deeper level, have a complete picture of what the path of yoga is all about and how to experience it beyond perhaps that 1 hour in the studio, but rather to have its benefits translate and permeate into every aspect of your being and into every area of your life. After all, yoga means union. Union of our mind, body, and spirit. Union with all life and union with the divine. We often hear the phrase, we are all one. And what we can do with yoga, especially via the 8 limbs of yoga, is transform that statement from a lovely intellectual idea to an experiential expression. As we go through the next 8 lessons, I will be helping you understand each of the 8 limbs of yoga via its own unique lesson. For a general overview, the 8 limbs of yoga are as follows. The first limb, yama, which refers to universal morality. The second limb, niyama, which refers to personal observances. The third limb, asanas, which refer to body postures. The fourth limb, pranayama, which refer to breathing exercises. The fifth limb, pratyahara, which refers to the control of the senses. The sixth limb, dharana, which refers to the concentration and focus of inner awareness. The seventh limb, dhyana, which refers to devotion and meditation. And the eighth limb, samadhi, which refers to union with the divine. To understand the 8 limbs of yoga further, let's go back a little in history to understand where they came from and why. As you may already be aware of, yoga's roots go back thousands of years to India, where yoga was considered the art of right living. Yoga began as a meditative practice, with really the main postures or poses being the sitting poses, such as the sweet pose, Sukhasana, or the famous lotus pose. Over the years, it became perfected and practiced, and the foundations of yoga philosophy were written down in a text called the Yoga Sutras. The author credited to the Yoga Sutras is Patanjali. Now, according to Swami Satchidananda, it is not clear, though, if Patanjali was one person or a group of people. Dates for the Yoga Sutras range anywhere from 5000 BC to 300 AD. Either way, this sacred text consists of nearly 200 Yoga Sutras, which help to systemize yoga and help us understand it in its full context, with Patanjali today known as the father of yoga. The Yoga Sutras explain the inner workings of the mind and provide an 8-step framework for controlling its often restless and chaotic nature, so that we can enjoy a deep sense of contentment and inner peace. And as you may have guessed it, these are the 8 limbs of yoga. As we know from ancient wisdom, and increasingly so today from modern research in the various disciplines, the mind controls our perception and thus reality. And it is the gateway to self-realization and self-actualization. It is often said, and most of us are coming to the personal awareness of this, that our mind is capable of creating our heaven and our greatest joys, or our hell and our greatest sorrows. However, to use the mind in the most effective manner, we first have to train the mind. We have to understand it and its inner workings. As we are also increasingly learning today, whether on an intellectual or an experiential level, it is not what happens to us ever in life that is the real root of the problem, but how we perceive it, and then how we respond or react to it. And so to offer the right understanding and training, the 8 limbs of yoga show us the way. At this time, let's get a little more practical to understand how the 8 limbs of yoga would be used or applied by you in your everyday life, how they would benefit you, and focus some more on their significance. It is helpful to understand that the first 6 limbs of yoga are regarded typically as the things that we would do, the thoughts, words, or actions that we would engage in to cultivate a deeper sense of awareness and understanding and live yoga in our everyday life. The 7th limb is a bridge between what we do and what happens to us, with the 8th limb being something that happens to us as a result of what we do via the first 6. However, it's important to understand that the 8 limbs are not hierarchical in nature, meaning that you have to do one to get to the next or to master the next step, etc. Each of the limbs are equally important and work synergistically and holistically. Each element is an essential component to offer completeness and experience the full potential of union. And so you can work with them and through them as they speak to you, depending on their relevance and significance at any point in your life or any particular moment that you are experiencing. Several of the 8 limbs of yoga focus specifically on the breath and body. And this helps us to foster an awareness of ourselves as individualized beings intimately connected to the unified whole of creation. In this way, the 8 limbs of yoga help us become aware of how we use our energy towards ourselves and others, including all life forms, nature, etc. The point and significance really of the 8 limbs of yoga is again to foster high quality of life based on a deep sense of joy, inner peace, creativity, and fulfillment. But on top of that, a life based on a sense of equanimity, where we are not attached and generating our own sense of suffering via the uncontrolled workings of the mind. As you will find from your personal journey, the 8 limbs of yoga will offer you numerous benefits along every step of the way, assuming that they are lived and applied. From understanding how to become a more conscious life creator, to how to deal with suffering or stress, how to decrease and eliminate worry and anxiety, how to increase your level of happiness, joy, contentment, how to improve your creativity and fulfillment, how to improve your health, and ultimately how to live a peaceful life with yourself and with all others. The 8 limbs of yoga help us attain moksha, or liberation. Freedom and liberation from the suffering, fear, and illusions that are generated by our minds.